Hi, good morning. That was great. I shared about Greta Thunberg a month or so ago, sharing with you how inspiring she was. That when she was 11 years old, she was this depressed young girl in Sweden with Asperger's, and she had stopped eating, she'd stopped talking, she stopped going to school, and she was so worried about the climate. And then she was inspired when she saw the climate strikes, the student strikes that students were having as a result of the Parkland shooting in 2018, students leaving and having these demonstrations. And it just inspired her to see that. And she thought, that's something I can do. And she actually just went down to the parliament in Sweden and sat out front with a sign. And that's the way it started. And then now at 16, she's spoken to leaders. During the climate strike in September, there was over 4 million people who participated, 185 countries, all kinds of, 820 civil society organizations, 3,000 companies, 9,000 websites, just this whole connection, just from her having that moment of inspiration and realizing that she wasn't powerless, that she can make a change. And I think she's actually on a sailboat going back to Europe, like right now. I think she's had this trip across the world. So it's a great. You can turn that down just a little bit, Shara. I'm getting some feedback. There you go. So it's a wonderful way to lay the foundation for my talk today, and I want to go over, we've been talking about spirituality in action. This has been our series for the whole year, and believe it or not, we're coming to the end of that series. I'm going to wrap it all up today because in the next few weeks we're talking about holidays that happen at this time of year, and so I wanted to kind of just bring this all together. And this has been a really meaningful series for me. It's been something that's been, I think, powerful and important for us to be talking about how we can use our spirituality to be in action in the world. And it was inspired by Reverend James Forbes, who wrote this prophetic justice principles, and he wrote it for which people of faith could test their leaders, their political leaders. That these justice principles, that our leaders should be focusing on these justice principles. And so we've taken it into, not only is that an important thing, but it's important for us. How do we act from these principles? How are we a part of these practices? And so I just want to go over the 10 principles real quickly to remind us what this journey we've been on for this whole last 10 months. So the first one is just seek the common good. Seek the common good, something that is good for all, that there's not a special interest or somebody that gets a little bit more, but there's a common understanding of what is good for all. Be truthful in facts and motives. It's a really good one to have our political leaders stand up to, but it's good for us as well to know that we can be truthful in our motives and our facts, and we know this from our spiritual principle of understanding that this divine truth is within us, and we can speak from that place. The third is to promote unity and inclusion. And again, our foundational teachings about oneness, about this inclusion and this unity. And then caring for the poor and protecting the vulnerable. And these were just wonderful conversations about how it is, what's that definition of being poor and being vulnerable, and how can we be that in our spiritual understanding, and how is it that we can lift up those that are in that place, including us. When we feel poor and when we feel vulnerable, how can we tap into the truth of who we are? And also be in action with others in the world. Guard freedom of thought and discussion. And this is so powerful that the thoughts that we have and the freedom that we have to express them and share them is just pivotal, and it's important to our spiritual teaching to be able to realize how powerful our words are and have that freedom to discuss. Respect for others' nations and other people. Again, this is this interconnectedness that we all belong. We're all one, and so having that respect for others is so important. Ensuring stewardship of creation, of other life, of our world, of our earth. cherishing the human family, connecting with, again, all different forms. And then today, finally, provide spiritually motivated moral leadership. That all of this, when we come from that place of moral leadership, all these other things are just effects. And when we practice what we teach, we practice the principles that we teach, which are oneness, and that we are all connected, that we have power in our word to create, that love is the most powerful energy in the world, that there's an abundance in the universe, that there's this law of circulation, that which we give comes back to us, that there's no need for us to be a sense of separation or in fight mode or fearful mode or holding on mode, that we can be generous and loving and kind and giving in all that we do. These are the principles that we teach, and when we practice them, all these principles are effects. We take care of each other. We take care of our earth. We seek the common good. We protect those that are vulnerable. We respect other people and nations and thoughts. We honor our words and cherish each other. And we stand up in leadership, as we saw Greta Thunberg do in such a powerful way, in a simple, powerful way. And so this is it's just been a very powerful process of affirming the foundation of our teaching and how valuable it is in our world today. And a couple of weeks ago, I shared with you the story that Dr. Forbes shared about his preacher friend, who when he was little, he would play church, and how he was his turn to preach one day, and he all of a sudden moment got filled with the Holy Spirit, he said, and he was preaching. And all his little friends said, whoa, calm down. We're just playing. And he said, I'm not playing, y'all. I'm not playing. And that story has stayed with me, because I think it's true for us today that we're not playing. This is serious stuff, the things that are going on in the world and what we have to share, and how we can be a presence for love and goodness and health and kindness and all those things is so powerful, that we have the power through our teachings to be leaders in the world in all that we do and how we experience. And so I've been rereading Ardo Shammer, who's written the book, The Essentials of Theory U. He's a MIT professor, scientist, and he studies about how it is that we make big system changes. And he works with big groups and systems. And so he has this process called Theory U. And he says that the major divides in our times include three aspects. He says ecological divide. So the self, our self, is not equal to nature. Social divide, our self does not equal the other. And spiritual divide, the self doesn't equal the spirit, the larger self. And I thought when I was reading that, I thought that sounds so familiar of what we talk about, which is in our sliding vision statement down there, that our very vision is about those three things, right? It's about awakening our inherent oneness with the divine and with our planet and with each other. And that is the very focus of these three different divides that happen in our life, in our world. And so he talks about this U cycle, and when we have a choice where we can come from a place that is destructive, he calls it absencing, or we can come from a place that's creative, which is presencing. And so in absencing, he says we turn backward. We decide that we want to keep things the way they are, or we want to go back to a place where we think it was better. We don't want to move forward, and we want to create something new. And he says that that turning backwards, that absencing, we would call it separation. That we're not remembering our oneness. We're from a place of separation, is caused by fear and hate and ignorance. And he says that it's a closed will, a closed heart, and a closed mind. And so fear comes from that being stuck in a closed will, meaning it has to be done our way. That, our will, our way. That hate comes from a closed heart, which is about stuck in one skin, he says. So it's only only me and mine and what looks like me and my familiarity, that's all that's important. And ignorance, which is a closed mind, which is stuck in one truth, not being open to seeing maybe a bigger truth. And how this kind of escalates is from ignorance to denial, to being blinded by facts. Kind of, you can see how this can unfold. That then creates a bubble. So we're not looking at others, we're entrenched, which creates this idea of hate of the other. And then fear, holding on, which causes blame, which causes violence, which causes the destructive action. So all of this absencing causes this destructive actions, and it's from the hate, the fear, and the ignorance. And he said something that struck me. I think I knew this, but he said it in a certain way. He said that it's 40% more likely for fake news to be retweeted than facts. You know, you never think you're going to use the word tweet in a certain, but user engagement is higher if it includes hate and anger and fear. And this is the core of the business model by social media, because they get the most eyes, they get the most retweets. And when you couple that with the power of special interests, people that are controlling the narratives, so think large corporations, people who have a lot of money, who might benefit from a narrative of climate denial, or benefit from a narrative of around gun violence, or how it is that we deal with these situations. You can see that we can be blinded. We can be blinded by these powerful influences on us. And so how it's true, and this is true in our philosophy, right? Energy flows where attention goes. So if all our attention is on these messages and these stories and the sense of separation or the sense of hate or blame or ignorance, our energy goes in a certain way. So how do we change that? This is where we are in a place to step up to moral leadership, to spiritually motivated moral leadership. And Otto Scharmer talks about presencing. He says, you're leaning into the emerging future. You're leaning into creating as opposed to destroying. So he talks about this when we download our past experience. Downloading is we're just living our past experience. Thomas Hubel, the spiritual teacher, says that it's like we're driving down the road on a piece of highway, and we get to the end and we just pull up a piece from the past and put it in front of us, and we drive along that, and then we pull up a piece of the past and we drive along that. So we're just continuing to drive along the same piece of highway because it's familiar, because it's the way it's always been, because that's all we think we know. And so he said that we have to break this cycle, break it. And the first thing we have to do, Otto Scharmer calls it suspending. It's seeing with fresh eyes. This is the open mind. It involves curiosity. Again, it's one of our values. They're slipping down there. Is curiosity, being open, not picking up the highway and putting it in front of us, but allowing ourselves to maybe see a new pathway. I've been sharing with you like William Urey's work about going to the balcony. Opening up the perspective, being able to suspend what we think and allow ourselves to maybe be able to hear and see in a new way. And what happens, people and systems need to see and sense themselves. They need to be able to see and understand who we are. And that's why I talk so much about shadow work, about why it's so hard for us, especially white folks, to talk about systemic racism, because it's hard for us to see because we're right in the middle of it. And when we start shining a light on it, it's kind of painful. It's kind of painful. And it's because it's so ubiquitous, we don't even know it. I had an interesting experience with my oldest son. When he was a freshman in college and he had to write, the English 101 class, and they had asked him to write about your family's rituals, your family's customs and rituals. And I'm thinking, oh boy, because I've been a really good mom. I've created all these great memories. And he wrote, oh, we really don't have any. Oh, we have green chili casserole on Christmas morning. Like, this is the ritual that he remembered. All the years I created, this is all he's got. I realized it's because he's so immersed in the culture, he can't see it. So all those rituals, all those things, all things we do, hiding eggs on Easter and getting dressed up at Halloween, opening the present of the Christmas morning, this is all the predominant culture. It's a white Christian culture that we're all indoctrinated in some ways. But it just is. It's not anything different and new. We have friends from different cultures, and they would talk about what they do, for their holidays, and it's like, oh, they actually have rituals. But so this idea of being able to step back and see ourselves and see the systems and see how we are, who we are, and what we do is the beginning of that suspending of seeing with fresh eyes and being able to understand how we create and what we do in our lives. And so then Otto says it's about redirecting. So we suspend and then we redirect. And this is sensing from the larger field, which is about the open heart, which is about compassion and love. To be able to open up our hearts to hear in a new way, to expand that field, to live in a place of compassion. I've had some beautiful conversations recently with minister colleagues I've been having deep conversations with around systemic racism and unconscious bias. And I was in a group this last week. It was a diverse group of ministers. And we were having this conversation about systemic racism specifically in CSL and, in our organizations. And two of the men who were white were having this conversation. And one of the ministers, who's an African-American woman, she kind of put her hand up to her mouth. We were on a Zoom call, and someone said, oh, did you have something to say? And she said, well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I just realized I've never heard white folks talk like this before. Like I've never had this experience. I feel kind of like a fly on the wall and just seeing this. And she said how fascinating it is how a white man is using white privilege to, destruct white privilege. And it was like she had this, this moment of opening up to this new awareness, this new understanding, because we had created this heartfelt place. And it reminded me that I had had an experience similar to that in some ways when I was at the ministers' gathering in Canada, and I was having breakfast with my minister friends, three of which were African-American women. And at one moment, one of them opened up her phone, and she got the news that the police officer who had killed Botham Jean was found guilty. And it was just this fresh moment. And because I was with this group of beloved ministers where we all were heart connected, I saw the relief and the grief and the sadness and the holding of this group of people who have held so much pain around the loss of young African American men, of the unfairness of not getting fair treatment, and the belief that it wasn't going to happen this time either. And there was just this moment, I was just in this sacred moment of witnessing something I don't get to see often. And so it's this opportunity that we all have to create these heart-centered experience, these compassionate moments, to open up and see others and be in a place to be able to understand and deepen in our relationships. That we have that opportunity in our spiritual communities to do that. We also have the opportunity to open up our hearts to those who just do not believe like we do, not think like we do, not understand where we are. And I was thinking back when I was about 17 years old. It was right at the height of the Iran hostage situation, where our diplomats had been taken hostage in Iran. And I was a teenager, and I was over at a friend's house, and her uncle was there, and he had small children, and we were watching the nightly news. That was back when there was a half an hour of nightly news, and that's all you got. And those were the good old days, I'll tell you. they were showing a demonstration, and like an anti-American demonstration. I can't remember what the details were, but they were Iranian students or somebody, in America, and they were mad, and they were demonstrating, and some Americans came over and started, beating them up. There was violence involved. And I was watching this, and I was kind of horrified that these people were beating these people up, and the uncle stood up and started cheering. He was like, yeah, hit him. I mean, he was so excited and angry. And I remember just like, what? And I hadn't seen that because I was blessed to have lived in a family that, didn't show that. And they were generally kind and compassionate and loving. And so to see that was so stark for me. And I remember thinking about those children, that's their model. That's what they see. And years later, I began to have much more compassion for those children and for that man who at that time was scared and angry. And we had, people that were our diplomats who were being held, and there was, threat of war and all these things that were up for him. And I think about that path, and it opens my heart to people who today are angry and mad and fearful. And how can we expand our awareness, not condone, obviously, but maybe open our hearts a little bit to how people have come to the conclusions that they've come to, who have acted where they've acted. And so to come from that place of compassion is so powerful. And then the third place is what he calls presencing, and it's the open will. And there's two parts to it. There's a letting go and a letting come. And he says this takes a lot of courage, because in the letting go, we have to maybe let go of what we think is the right way to be, what we, our will. And this is so powerful for us in our teaching, right? Because when we let go, what do we let go into? We let go into this truth, this powerful principle that already knows. Nam Shakti said it in her prayer, already knows before we even utter what is the highest and best. And what we're doing in that prayer is surrendering to that way, to that truth. It's through us, but there's a trust in this principle, this presence that moves and creates for us. And then we let it come. We let it come and be part of our experience. It gives us vision and intention, and that takes courage to then enact, linking our head and our heart and our hands, as Otto would say, and embody this new truth so that we create. We create from an open will, which takes courage, and an open heart, which takes compassion, and an open mind, which takes curiosity, which are all the things we see in Greta, who shares with us those things as she steps forward. So what is it that we can do? I've been thinking a lot about this, and I feel so passionate about this, and sometimes I wonder, I come and I share all these ideas, and we talk about it, and then we go away, for the week, and we go about our lives, and we forget, and we, and then we come back, and we go, oh yeah, and then we go away, and I think, how do we get to that place where we say we're not playing? And that we can't just suspend our understanding 6 days of the week and then come and know them, but how do we practice them? How do we move them forward? How do we do this? And so what is it that we do? I think the first thing that we can do is that we don't deny the facts in our life. We've got a lot of crazy stuff going on in our world right now, but we can still look for the good. We can look with fresh eyes, with curiosity. In Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes said, principle is not bound by precedence, which means it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's happened in the past. It doesn't matter what the precedence is. It doesn't matter how we've thought. That principle can create something new at every single moment. And when we can look for that which we want to experience, look for the good, that is part of not ripping up the highway, but creating a new path, Thomas Hubel says, we are writing the book of life while we're reading it. We are an active evolution. We have the power to create in this moment while we're in the process of living. That's the power that we have. I get this little daily meditation from Matthew Fox. Matthew Fox, the theologian, he was a Catholic priest, and he got silenced for talking about the earth and taking care of it, and that the Christ wasn't Jesus. It was not just central to Jesus, that we all, of the Christ. He got silenced, and then he got excommunicated. But he's still talking, and he's just an amazing person. And he sends these little daily meditations out. And this morning, or maybe it was yesterday morning, I got his daily meditation, and he said, not much good has gone on this week, but he said, I was heartened while I was watching the impeachment hearings. And I kind of perked up because I wasn't too heartened watching the impeachment hearings. But what he said is that in watching that, he quoted Meister Eckhart that said, good people praise good people. And he said, it was heartening to watch those 3 diplomats who are obviously good people, who are doing good work, who are working for the good of our country and the world in integrity and honesty, and that they just represent a whole lot of other people out there that are doing good work. And so he said, I was heartened, and he was looking for the good. He was looking for the good and praising it in that moment. And that we can do that too. We can, not deny the facts, not deny what's going on, but we can look for that which is good. Greta is doing, what the ambassador is doing, what the people in the world that are speaking up and speaking out and holding this truth and loving, and that our system works, and that we have a process that works, and we can lift that up in our own everyday experience. And then, holding that space, being that place of the upper balcony, of presencing what is going on. And we do that by listening. He says, when we listen from a place of downloading, we go to a meeting and it's just like, yeah, I know this, this is exactly what, that is part of that downloading, about just going over and over again. And so he talks about 3 different ways to listen. He says, factual listening, which is pay attention. He says, pay attention to what is surprising. Be curious, have an open mind. That's just factual listening. He says there's empathic listening, which is the open heart, stepping into another's perspective, love them, switch on your heart, open your heart. We can do that in every circumstance, even while we're watching the news. Matthew Fox says he calls it praying in the news. So when he watches the news, he's just in prayer. I had a teacher that was a Sufi Baptist minister married to a rabbi. He had all kinds of, and he would say, when I watch the news, I pull up a chair and I put Jesus right there and I put my arm around him and we watch the news together, So we might not use that analogy for us, but we can absolutely watch from that place of presence to bring forth that empathic listening, to hear from our heart, to switch to our heart. But then he talks about the third form, and he calls it generative listening. And this is where we let go and let it come. He said this is the hardest kind because you don't do anything. You don't disengage. You just hold the space. You just hold the space. And he says when we do that long enough, things shift and things change. He likened it to a flame in welding. That if you take a flame and you put it up against a metal, you take it away, nothing happens. But when you hold it long enough, the metal softens and becomes moldable, and you can create something new out of it. And that so often we don't allow that opportunity. We don't just allow that opportunity to sit in generative listening. Try this with your kids, if you still have kids. Because if you just sit, not trying to fix it, not trying to change it, not trying to share your own information or your own point of view, but just sit in that listening, shifts can happen, change can happen, and things can mold, new avenues can open up. This presencing isn't, I'm talking about presencing and absencing. Presencing isn't the opposite of absencing. Presencing is the middle way, because there can be absencing on either side of any issue. We can have extreme beliefs and ways on either side of any issue. Presencing comes in with that middle way. And Sharma says, he talks about the absencing, those two options that we can turn away, close down, move towards absencing, enacting prejudice, hate, or fear, or you can open up and turn towards presencing, embodying curiosity, compassion, and courage. He says those two responses are less than an inch apart. It is our intentional act to choose the latter that changes the way the future unfolds. Action from shared awareness redirects the course of our collective journey. It holds the seed of the future that stays in need of us, each moment now. So the last thing is like leading from presence. One of my favorite quotes by Dr. Holmes that I often repeat to myself is, life lies open to me, rich, full, and abundant. I have only to open the portals of my soul and accept that which is ready to express through me. Today I fling these portals wide. Today I'm an instrument through which life flows. When we are leading from presence, we become the instrument for which life flows. We become the powerful creator that we are. Dr. Holmes says, you are united with all, you are one with the eternal light itself. The presence of spirit within you blesses everyone you meet, tends to heal everything you touch, brings gladness into the life of everyone you contact. Therefore, you are a blessing to the world, to yourself, to humankind, and to the day in which you live. William James says that the ultimate test of any ethic or moral or spiritual philosophy is its effect on our conduct. It's how we bring our spirituality into action, how we move forward. That's what this whole year has been about, of how do we take these beliefs and these teachings and transform ourselves so that we can't help to be better in the world. We can't help but to be better in the world if we are practicing and believing and teaching and living these principles. In his book, The Essentials of Theory U, Otto Scharmer writes in his dedication, he says, to the emerging movement of people who bridge the three major divides of our time, the ecological, the social, and the spiritual divide, I believe he's dedicating that book to us, that we're a part of that emerging movement. And I thank you for taking this journey with me and for being part of this series that we've been a part of. So let's take it into our prayer time right now. Close your eyes. Just take in these words of Dr. Ernest Holmes. Life lies open to me, rich, full, abundant. My thought, which is my key to life, opens all doors for me. I have only to open the portals of my soul and accept that which is ready to express through me. Today I fling these portals wide. Today I am the instrument through which life flows. So just take that into your heart. Today I'm the instrument through which life flows. How is it that we can step into this truth and be a place of an open mind, curiosity, an open heart, compassion, and an open will, courage? Where in our lives can we stand up in our own spiritually motivated moral leadership to be the presence in the world that transforms our life so that we create a new road ahead as opposed to just ripping up the past and driving down that road? Let us just take into our hearts that quality that you want to be an expression of in this coming week. Is it curiosity, compassion, courage? Is it something else? Just allow whatever comes forth for you, whatever word, whatever spiritual quality, and just allow that to settle into your heart. And let it flow through your physical being. And let it overflow from you into this room. And just notice how it touches the people in front of you and behind you, next to you. Imagine it lighting up this room. And if there's a quality that you're not able to grasp in this moment, but you know that you need, that is here in this room, and you can breathe it in. We create this powerful field that expands because of our interconnectedness with life. Let that expand outside of this room. We take these qualities and we allow it to flow out throughout this beautiful campus, to flow out over the town of Leesburg and where you came from this morning, your home, and all the people who live there, that it expands to the state of Virginia, to Maryland, to Washington, D.C. and beyond. And let us just linger there in Washington, D.C., knowing that our leaders are moral and courageous and heartfelt, that they are presencing to the truth and making decision and moving forward in the highest and best for all of us, for that common good, seeking that common good. And let us expand to all of the United States, and you might find a place within our country where you know that it needs a little extra love. I so speak a word for those who have been kidnapped and have the young women and children who have been exploited, and that's been brought forth from this incidents in California. Just knowing that there is love and justice and support. Let us expand to the world, and as we do this, we're aware of those who might be online with us, who might be watching this at a later time, and just include all of our online community in this moment of blessing. And allow that energy to move around this world and expand into the universe. As we leave that energy out into the world, we breathe back our very presence back into this room, into our heart, and breathe down into your body, into your feet, grounding into this beautiful earth, this Mother Earth, sending it love. It's from this place of groundedness that I know that I am a presence of the divine, and this presence is all that there is, everywhere available, right here, right now. This love, this courage, this compassion, this curiosity is the divine expressing in and through me. And as it is this expression of me, it is the expression of each person here within the sound of my voice, within this room. And I claim and know that we are the presence of the divine as we go about our week, that we step up into whatever leadership is called to us to be, whatever presence is ours to be. I know that what is to be and how it is to unfold is already known in the mind of the divine, and that this intention that we have just sets it into motion through the law. So we set this intention into the law, knowing that it is already done, and we celebrate that truth by simply letting go and letting be. Let us know this together by saying, so it is. So we let it be. Hey, you guys are going to sing about opening